The forest floor pulsed like it was breathing. No one said it at first. The thought surfaced independently in all three of them, arriving with the same quiet certainty as cold creeping into bone. The campsite lay deep in the forest, far past any marked trail, where the trees grew thicker and older, their trunks warped with age and lichen. The ground dipped slightly, forming a shallow basin carpeted in dark needles and rotting leaves. It was the kind of place sound seemed reluctant to travel, where even footsteps felt absorbed before they could echo. They had chosen the spot just before dusk. Caleb had said it felt sheltered. Nora had said it felt contained. Simon hadn't been able to articulate his unease at all, only that the air tasted old, as if it had been recycled too many times. Now it was fully night. The fire had burned low, reduced to a small ring of embers that glowed like watchful eyes. Beyond its reach, the forest pressed close, trunks crowding together, branches knitting the darkness into something dense and layered. No insects chirred. No owls called. The silence wasn't complete. It was managed, as if something were carefully holding sound in check. Nora noticed the ground first. She'd stood to stretch, boots sinking slightly into the soil. The earth felt wrong under her weight. Not soft, not unstable, but yielding in a slow, elastic way that reminded her of pressing down on a chest and waiting for breath to return. She froze. The ground rose. Not much, barely perceptible, but it lifted gently, pushing back against her soul before settling again. Down, down. The forest floor pulsed like it was breathing. "Nora," Simon said quietly, "why did you stop?" She didn't answer right away. Her heart beat faster, sinking too easily with the subtle movement beneath her. "Don't move," she said finally. Caleb looked up from the fire. "What?" "Just stay still." She lifted one foot slowly. The ground beneath it dipped inward, then smoothed itself out, leaves sliding back into place as though guided by intention rather than gravity. Caleb stood. "Okay, what's going on?" Nora crouched and pressed her palm flat against the soil. It was damp, cold. The texture of decaying leaves and loam clung to her skin. Beneath it all was resistance, firm but not rigid. She held her breath. The ground pushed back. A shallow swell, like a muscle flexing beneath skin. Simon swore under his breath. That's not possible. They stood together now, fire forgotten, attention drawn downward. Once they were aware of it, the movement became impossible to ignore. A slow, rhythmic expansion and contraction spreading outward in a wide, uneven circle, strongest at the center of the clearing and fading as it reached the tree line. Breathing, Caleb knelt and brushed aside a layer of needles with his boot. Maybe its roots? Shifting. The forest answered with silence. No wind, no settling creaks. Even the leaves overhead had gone still, as if listening. Simon shivered. Roots don't do that. They dug with their hands, careful, tentative. The soil parted easily, dark and wet, releasing a smell that wasn't rot exactly, but something older, mineral-heavy, tinged with sap and iron. Beneath the first few inches, the ground grew warmer. Nora recoiled. "It's warm." Caleb touched it, then pulled back sharply. "Jesus!" The pulsing quickened. Not dramatically, just enough to be noticed, like a heart responding to exertion. Simon's flashlight beam shook as he swept it across the exposed earth. The light caught on shapes that didn't belong. Shallow grooves etched into the soil, curving lines that repeated in spirals and branching patterns. Not roots, not cracks, marks. These weren't made by erosion, Simon said. The grooves extended outward, disappearing beneath untouched leaf litter, forming a vast, incomplete pattern. Nora recognized the uneasy symmetry of it, the sense that they were only seeing a fragment of something much larger. "A ritual site," she whispered. Caleb shook his head. "No, there'd be stones, bones, something." The ground beneath them contracted. A deeper pull this time, enough to draw loose soil inward. Their balance shifted instinctively as if standing on a slow-moving surface. Simon stumbled. "It's reacting." "To what?" Caleb asked. Nora didn't answer. She was watching the trees. The trunks at the edge of the clearing had begun to lean. Not falling, not uprooting, but angling inward, subtle as time-lapse growth. Bark creaked softly. The sound stretched and muted, like something breathing through wood. The pulsing spread. They felt it under their boots now, through their calves, up into their knees. The rhythm wasn't mechanical. It varied slightly, like something adjusting to discomfort or attention. Simon's voice dropped. "I think it knows we're here." As if in response, the ground swelled again, stronger, pushing upward in a low mound at the center of the clearing. Leaves slid aside, soil cracking softly, revealing a smooth, dark surface beneath. Not stone, not bark. It was flesh-like, though no one said the word. Veined with pale lines that glimmered faintly in the firelight, the surface rose and fell with intention. The grooves they'd uncovered aligned with it, connecting like pathways. Nora felt a sudden pressure behind her eyes, a sensation of being focused on. "It's not buried," she said slowly. "We are." Caleb backed away, nearly tripping over his pack. "This isn't real." The ground pulsed harder. Simon pressed his hands to his ears, breath coming fast. "It's communicating." "How?" Caleb demanded. "By responding," Simon said. "By shaping itself around us." The soil near their tent shifted, tugging at the stakes. Fabric tightened and slackened as the ground beneath it subtly reformed, contouring to a new shape. A shape that enclosed them. Nora's thoughts raced. Ancient forests were worshipped, she said. Not gods in the land itself. The pulsing slowed, waited. Caleb stared at the exposed surface. What does it want? The answer came without words. The ground rose again, higher this time, not aggressive but expectant. The patterns in the soil glowed faintly, warmth spreading outward in branching lines that traced the clearing's boundary. Simon felt it then, a sense of invitation, of being recognized, as if their presence had completed something long unfinished. "It's been dormant," he said, "and we woke it." The forest shifted. Trees leaned closer. Roots pushed upward at the edges of the clearing, reshaping the ground into a shallow bowl. The path they'd taken in vanished as soil flowed back into place, seamless and smooth. Nora realized with sudden clarity that the pulsing wasn't breathing. It was growing. The ground beneath her feet adjusted, rising to meet her stance, molding itself to her weight. She felt it memorizing her shape. The fire went out. In the darkness, the forest floor pulsed steadily, patiently, as though preparing to make room for something new. A light appeared above the treeline and began to follow us. They had been hiking since late afternoon, pushing past the last marked trail into territory where the map became suggestions rather than fact. The forest grew dense and older with each step, gnarled trunks twisting upward, limbs overlapping so thickly that the sky was a mere smudge above them. Mist gathered in pockets along the ground, cold and damp against boots, clinging to clothes, pooling in hollows where moss had taken root. Cora led the way, her flashlight beam cutting narrow streaks through the darkness. Behind her, Julian moved cautiously, picking his steps over roots slick with dew. Theo brought up the rear, occasionally muttering about losing sight of familiar landmarks, his breath fogging faintly in the cold air. Night settled fully while they walked. The usual chorus of nocturnal life, crickets, owls, distant rustling, was conspicuously absent. Only the wind whispered through the trees, low and hesitant, like the forest itself was listening. They paused in a small clearing to catch their breath. The faint light from the flashlight reflected off the mist in slow, dancing rays. Theo adjusted his pack. "Feels wrong," he said. "Too quiet." Cora didn't answer. She was staring upward. A pale light hovered just above the treeline. It wasn't a star, not a reflection, not a lantern. It moved with a deliberate grace, tracking their movements as if it were aware of them. "Do you see that?" Cora whispered. Julian blinked, squinting. That's a light, yeah, but it's moving. Is it attached to a drone?" "No drone makes the patterns it's doing," Cora said. Watch it. They moved forward slowly. Each step they took, the light adjusted, shifting in the sky in subtle ways, hovering slightly to the left when they veered right, tilting to maintain an overhead position as if anticipating every movement. Shadows stretched long and distorted, bending unnaturally under the glow. Theo shivered. It's following us. Cora nodded. Not just following, learning, reacting. They pressed on, trying to keep calm. Every step took them deeper into the forest, where the mist thickened and the trees closed in around them. The light mirrored their progress, maintaining a constant position above the treeline, dipping slightly as if inspecting them. Julian shined his flashlight upward, trying to illuminate it directly. The beam passed through the glow without diffusing, reflecting nothing, bouncing off nothing. The light was entirely self-contained, yet it moved with intention. It's watching, Julian muttered, his voice trembling. Cora noticed the forest itself beginning to change. The ground beneath their feet shifted subtly. Roots raised, the soil settling in waves, leaves rearranging as if to form patterns. Moss glistened unnaturally in the light, following paths that curved toward the clearing ahead. It's ancient, Cora said softly. Not the light, the forest, this place. This whole place is alive. It's aware of us. Theo's flashlight caught something moving in the underbrush, though there was no sound, no rustle aside from the soft exhalation of the mist. Shadows bent toward them, as if drawn by the glow. The light dipped slightly, illuminating the patterns in the moss and roots more clearly. Spirals and arcs, like maps or symbols. We're being guided, Cora said. It wants us to follow. They walked in silence, nerves taut. Every time they paused, the light hovered just above them, adjusting its position as if to nudge them onward. Leaves shivered along the branches, though no wind stirred. Each step they took seemed anticipated, mirrored, corrected by an unseen intelligence. Julian swallowed hard. Who or what is doing this? Cora didn't answer. She simply stared ahead, noticing that the trail beneath them twisted in ways the natural forest shouldn't allow. Roots arched into arcs, soil hummed faintly under their boots. The mist thickened around them like a low-hanging veil. The light floated, patient, perfectly aligned with the shifting path. Theo pointed. Look at that, those markings in the moss. They're not natural. The light tilted, illuminating the patterns directly, as if acknowledging Theo's observation. Lines spiraled outward, converging on a faint clearing ahead. The forest floor pulsed in time with their steps, rhythmic and deliberate, almost like breathing. It's leading us, Cora said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know to where. The clearing grew larger. Ancient stones rose from the earth, carved with symbols that mirrored those in the moss along the path. They glowed faintly in the light above, pale and deliberate. The air vibrated, carrying a subtle hum that pressed against their chests. Shadows bent toward the stones, stretching unnaturally, guided by the floating light. Julian's hand hovered over one of the stones. The light tilted again, brighter now, focusing on the carvings. The forest seemed to pulse in response, roots creeping subtly along the ground, aligning with the illuminated patterns. Cora felt a prickling awareness, an intelligence older than memory, waiting, observing. The light wasn't merely following them. It was expecting them. Every movement, every glance, every hesitation had been accounted for. The forest reshaped itself subtly to accommodate their passage, guiding, framing, preparing. Theo stepped closer to the light, almost involuntarily. Shadows of their own forms stretched along the roots, pointing forward, converging on the central stone. The air pulsed more strongly, warm and cold at once, pressing against their skin. It's alive, Julian whispered. Both the light and the forest. And it knows us. Cora stepped forward cautiously, following the path illuminated by the hovering glow. It wants us to see something, she said. Her voice trembled, though she did not stop. Something it's been waiting to show. The stones hummed, the carvings faintly vibrating, their shapes mirrored in the moss and roots along the ground. The forest's rhythm pulsed in harmony with the light above. Every shadow, every branch, every slight rise in the terrain responded to the glow, aligning perfectly with the patterns laid before them. Theo's breath caught. "We're walking into its design," he said. "It's an intelligence, and we're part of it now." Cora swallowed hard. Or we always were. The air tightened, and for a brief moment, the forest went utterly silent. Even the mist hung motionless. Then the light tilted again, brighter, almost insistent, as if directing their attention to the largest stone at the center of the clearing. They approached, hypnotized by the patterns and the glow. Shadows bent, roots shifted, and the moss pulsed faintly beneath their boots, guiding them forward. The light hovered just above the central stone, aligning perfectly, unblinking, aware. Lena's chest tightened. "It's not just leading us. It's preparing something." Theo's hand hovered over the stone, but he didn't touch it. The air seemed to thrum, subtle vibrations crawling up his arms, pressing against his skin. Julian whispered, almost in awe, "It's awake." The forest pulsed beneath their feet. The hovering light adjusted minutely, tilting to cast illumination across the carvings, the roots, the moss, everything aligned in a deliberate choreography. Cora stepped closer, realizing with a shiver that they had no choice but to follow. Every instinct urged her to flee, but the light's movement, the forest's responses, and the subtle, inevitable path of illumination left them with only one direction. The clearing held them in perfect alignment, every shadow, every stone, every root converging under the light's guidance. The air hummed faintly, the forest breathing around them, patient, deliberate, and ancient. They froze, knowing the light had led them to the center for a reason, though what it wanted remained unknown. Its pale glow illuminated not just the stones, but the path they had taken, the carvings along the roots, the arc of the mist, every element arranged as if to prepare for something far larger than themselves. The light hovered, unwavering. The forest pulsed beneath their boots, alive and aware, shaping itself subtly, anticipating each movement, waiting. And somewhere deeper, unseen, something older than memory stirred, guided by the glow, watching what they would do next. The three of them stood in silence, aware that the forest, the light, and whatever ancient intelligence had awakened here had already chosen the roles they were to play. The light tilted slightly, as if to remind them. The path was set, the forest was alive, and the next step was theirs, but only theirs to take. And what lay beyond remained unseen, patient, eternal, and entirely certain.